Hello, everybody. My name is Donna B, and I work at the Kenneth Young Center. This is a 101, everything you need to know before you fly the rainbow flag and call yourself an ally to the LGBTQ community. I am joined today by Gray, Luka, Andy, and Molly, who will introduce themselves shortly.
Our first goal is that you will gain a general understanding of sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression.
Next, to learn inclusive practices for communicating and building trust with youth.
Third, to gain a general understanding of how one's lived experience can be impacted by race, ethnicity, culture, gender identity, expression, age, sexual orientation, class, and ability.
Lastly, we hope that you leave with ideas of how to empower youth to advocate for their dignity and rights. I am Luka, my pronouns are they, them, and I have been working with the Kenneth Young Center since October of 2019.
I'm Greyson, my pronouns are he, him, I'm 18, and I've been working with Kenneth Young Center since October 2019.
I'm Molly, my pronouns are she, her, and I am one of the co-founders of the Pinta Pride Project.
I'm Andy, my pronouns are he, him, and I am a youth advocate at Mundelein High School.
You may have seen these acronyms before, but not know what they mean. The L stands for lesbian, G for gay, B for bisexual, T for transgender, Q for queer, and Q for questioning. Plus means in addition to more identities such as intersex and asexual. There are many more identities than these, but I like to use LGBTQ+ because it's way more inclusive of everyone and implies everyone, and it's way easier to understand.
The LGBTQ+ community refers to people whose sexualities and genders go beyond the traditional binaries of male, female, and heterosexuality. Some letters refer to someone's sexuality, aka their sexual orientation, an inherent or immutable, enduring emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to other people. Others refer to someone's gender, which is one's innermost concept of self as male, female, a blend of both or neither, how individuals perceive themselves and what they call themselves. One's gender identity can be the same or different from their sex assigned at birth, and other letters are a combination of both.
Since the understanding and the cultural values about the LGBTQ issues are always changing, so are the terms that we use to talk about them. So some outdated and offensive terms are transvestite and transsexual, transgendered, it's not a verb, she-male, he, she, shim, it, and other phrases said by persons not of that orientation/identity. You may be wondering why the term queer is not listed as derogatory. This is an example of a reappropriated/reclaimed word, which means that we have taken this word back from the people who used it to hurt us and made it our own word. I like to use the word queer because I personally identify with it. It makes me more comfortable than identifying as pan. That being said, it's best practice when using reclaimed words or words that you are unsure of to not use reclaimed terms that do not apply to you. Use F slur, D slur, T slur, or Q slur if retelling a story when homophobic/transphobic slur was used. When working with youth, it is important to take the lead from them on what terms to use. If you're unsure, it's always okay to ask what is acceptable to them.
When we talk about understanding gender, there are four main questions that we'd like to ask to better understand it. First, how do I see myself? This is your gender identity. What would you mark on a survey that is asking for your gender, what you truly identify with and see yourself as? A person's gender identity is extremely personal to them and has to do with their comfort. People may make comments like, she's just a girl who thinks she's a boy, for example. This is really hurtful and damaging. Let's say you're a man. How would it feel if somebody told you you were actually a woman pretending to be a man? Would it make you upset? Second, what does the medical community label you? This is also referred to as your sex assigned at birth. We typically categorize people as male, female, or intersex based on their external genitalia. Your gender identity does not have to align with your sex assigned at birth, but when it does, you can refer to that as cisgender. When your gender identity is different from your sex assigned at birth, that can be referred to as transgender.
Third, how do other people perceive your gender? This is gender attribution, which is heavily cultural and may change based on where and who you are. For example, in some cultures, it is extremely common for young girls to have short hair, while in others, it is a stereotype that only boys have short hair. This can lead to misgendering. And fourth, how do you want to display your gender? This has to do with your gender expression. Do you like dressing more feminine, masculine, both, or do you try to steer away from those categories altogether? Ask yourself this question in order to better understand how we express our gender to others, even though you may not have thought it before. Know that just because someone may like dressing a certain way doesn't mean you know their gender identity or sex assigned at birth. It is best practice to not assume other people's gender identity, no matter what their medical records say or how you interpret their appearance.
Pronouns are how we refer to people without saying their names. We generally break these up into two categories: binary, meaning male and female, and non-binary, meaning neither male nor female exclusively. Examples of binary pronouns are she, her, hers, he, him, his. Examples of non-binary pronouns are they, them, theirs, em, er, sie, zim, zer. It's hurtful to assume or ignore someone's pronouns. Asking what pronouns do you use is a simple way to build trust.
Before we skip ahead, think about this scenario. You're waiting in the waiting room with some other people at the doctor's office, and you see a cell phone on one of the seats. You pick it up and ask everyone, is anyone missing blank's phone?
Did you say there in your head? If so, that is grammatically correct. While referring to people with they, them pronouns might seem confusing, don't overcomplicate it. It's nothing new. Even if you mess up, always make sure to correct yourself. Don't make it a big deal, just say the right pronouns and move on.
When it comes to sexuality, here are 2 questions to ask. First, on a spectrum, to what level do you experience sexual, emotional, or romantic attractions? If I had to describe myself, I would say I'm a little closer to aromantic on the romantic scale and a little closer to asexual on the sexual scale. There are many different labels people can use to describe the level of romantic and sexual attraction they experience, but what's most important is to validate for young people is that wherever they find themselves on the spectrum is perfectly okay.
Second, you can ask, what attributes do you find yourself attracted to, if any? Just like how there can be many combinations of romantic and sexual attraction, there are many combinations of orientations based on the gender spectrum. For example, I identify as male, which means that I find myself in the male/masculine part of the gender spectrum, and I am attracted to people of any parts of the gender spectrum. Males who like males could be gay, and males who like all genders could be pansexual. Again, how you identify is yours. There are many more identities beyond gay and straight. It's best practice to not assume anyone's sexuality or that they ever experienced sexual attraction. Let them tell you.
Now that you've got some knowledge on what LGBTQ plus means, let's talk about why you should care about LGBTQ plus issues. Here are the top 4 reasons why you should care about inclusive practices. In 2017, GLAAD's Accelerating Acceptance Survey found that younger Americans are 4 times more likely to identify as LGBTQ than older generations. Younger generations were also much more likely to identify with genders and orientations outside of the gender binary, with 8% of those LGBTQ plus 18 to 24-year-olds identifying as neither cisgender nor straight. This data has been consistent over the past 30 years. While the data is positive and reflects that we're growing into a more accepting society for LGBTQ people, that does not mean that the struggle is over, not even close.
In 2017, Greyson's National School Climate Survey found that 6 out of 10 LGBTQ students reported feeling unsafe at school because of their sexual orientation. 4 out of 10 reported feeling unsafe at school because of how they express their gender. Over 1/3 of LGBTQ students missed at least 1 day of school in the past month because they felt unsafe at or on their way to or from school. Nearly 1/5 of LGBTQ students reported having changed schools due to feeling unsafe or uncomfortable at school, and most LGBTQ students reported avoiding school functions and extracurricular activities to some extent, and over a quarter avoided them often or frequently.
A similar trend was found in the 2017 Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System. It found that LGBTQ youth are nearly 2 times more likely to be bullied at school and electronically, experience sexual and physical dating violence, smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol before the age of 13, use marijuana, have sexual intercourse before the age of 13.
The same study found that LGBTQ plus youth are 3 times more likely to be forced to have sexual intercourse, seriously consider suicide, make a suicide plan, attempt suicide, make a suicide attempt resulting in hospitalization, use heroin, and use methamphetamines.
If you are a young person in crisis, feeling suicidal, or in need of a safe and judgment-free place to talk, please call the Trevor Project Lifeline now at 1-866-488-7386.
Even though LGBTQ youth only make up 7% of the total youth population, they make up to 40% of the total homeless youth population. The most common reason why so many LGBTQ youth are homeless is family conflict, particularly over their sexual orientation or gender identity. If you are LGBTQ and are currently experiencing homelessness or may be soon, contact the Kenneth Young Center LGBTQ Center at lgbtqcenter@kennethyoung.org.
LGBTQ community is extremely diverse. We come from all different nationalities, races, ethnicities, religious backgrounds, etc. Despite that fact, we often talk about LGBTQ plus issues as homogenized and separate from other forms of oppression that people of color, people with disabilities, and people in poverty face. For example, in reality, LGBTQ plus people are in all of those communities. So even when you try to be culturally competent, if you're not being LGBTQ inclusive, you are inherently excluding people of color, people with disabilities, and people in poverty, and other marginalized groups. This exclusion of LGBTQ people from talking about our histories can lead to the erasure of experiences of queer people of color, which can lead to a denial in opportunities and increased risk factors. The disparities that LGBTQ plus people face can be exponentially compounded when those individuals are members of other oppressed groups as well. It's also been said that oftentimes when a young person may experience racism, discrimination, and microaggressions constantly throughout their day, they can go home and talk about it with their families who look like them and talk like them. However, when those same kids are LGBTQ plus, they might lose that support as well. You might not be able to go home if you're trans and talk to your cisgender parents and have them understand where you're coming from and what it is that you experience and why that is. And that just really emphasizes the importance of having LGBTQ competency be a part of all your other competencies as well.
I'm Gray, and what I do outside of this video is I work with Kenneth Young Center, I work at the LGBTQ Center, and I run a movie night. And in this picture on the left, I am talking on behalf of Congressman Raja about a anti-LGBT bullying bill, and I'm his little representative for that, so that's what I do.
I'm Luka. Pictured on the right is me participating in the Day of Silence. I work with the Kenneth Young Center, and I host groups and meetings to give LGBTQ youth a sense of belonging and community.
I'm Molly Pinta, and I work with my family to bring different pride celebrations to my hometown. That was when we went to the Today Show, and I went with my entire family, and we flew in my uncle to New York, and they surprised us. The drag queen there is Nina West, and they surprised us and flew her in too.
Dude, that's so wild.
That was, I think, one of my first events with Molly. It was a trans rights march somewhere here. I just remember that it was outside of a Jewel Osco. It was along a street, and we marched. I remember it was so cold, but we marched back up and down this long street for a long time. And in that picture, there's one of the cops that joined us, and I remember she was so sweet. I go to all of Molly's events.
I would just say, from working with a lot of the kids, we are their only source of family. If I hadn't found Kenneth Young Center, I would be completely on the streets. So your job is to help these people like me, and it's important for you to understand everything about them.
Even though, yes, like gay marriage was legalized and it's no longer a crime, there's still so much more work to be done, and our fight is not over.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
Love yous. Bye. YMCA.
Bye.
YMCA.